Okay, the other malacha we finished. So, whatever, schita, the bishul we did already. Okay, today we're going to do a not such a long malacha, but it's a very important practical halacha. It's called Tochen, grinding. On Shabbos it's forbidden to grind things. In the Mishkan, where did they do grinding? They used to take the herbs that they use for the dyes, and they would have to, how did you make dye? They would take herbs and grind it up and mix it with the liquid, whatever. So in the Mishkan, they would do the grinding of the various different things. But grinding, as we'll learn, is only forbidden on things that grow from the ground. Things that grow from the ground, they are not allowed to do grinding. Things that don't grow from the ground, like cheese, eggs, things like that, there's no problem grinding, but as we'll learn, you can't use a grinder, you can't use a grater. They have these graters that, the metal things, so that you can't use on Shabbos, even for things that you're allowed to grind. And the reason for that is because it's a vessel that's designated, like we learned by Bais Din. By Bais Din, you can't use a vessel which is designated for selection. You have to do it with your hand and so on and so forth. Okay, so bottom line is, what is called grinding fruits and vegetables? So basically, halacha is unclear. Grinding doesn't mean only when you grind it. It also means cutting it into very small pieces. So now the question, halacha, what is called small pieces? It's unclear. Halacha says it's unclear in halacha what grinding into small pieces. So therefore it says in halacha, when you want to cut fruits or vegetables on Shabbos, you should make them a little bit bigger than you normally would do it. To give you an example, there's a big shaila in halacha. Israeli salad, they cut up the pieces very little, yeah? So the question is that called grinding or not? So they say if you want to make an Israeli salad on Shabbos, you should do it right before eating, and also you should do it a little bit, drop bigger than you normally would do it. So that's, or by the way, the same thing applies to mashing. You can't mash, some people say potato, forget about that. You can't take a question about a potato, we'll see later. You can't take a potato and grind it because it's pieces. What's the concept of grinding? You take a bigger thing and you make it into small little pieces. So sometimes it's a big argument in halacha, but the Avraham Chaim Noah's Mekel, like for instance, the question would be in a practical level, can I mash a banana on Shabbos? Now when you mash a banana, it's very interesting, it doesn't become pieces. It doesn't become pieces, it's just a mush. But grinding is when it becomes particles, that's the concept of grinding. You grind flour, you grind, wheat, whatever it is, you're making it into small particles. But the question would be avocado and banana, those are basically the only two I think that they mention. It's a big argument in halacha if you're allowed to or not. We hold you're allowed to do it, other people say you're not allowed to, because that wouldn't be grinding, because it's not mashing really, because again, grinding is when you mash it and it becomes small particles. But if it's not becoming small particles, it's becoming a solid mass, like avocado, or, if you want to make guacamole on Shabbos, right? So the question is, how you're allowed to do it. So we're going to get into details. Yeah?
What about tuna? You mix it with mayonnaise?
Tuna doesn't grow from the ground.
It's only for fruits and vegetables.
I said, Tochen only applies, no, not only to fruits and vegetables. Grinding only applies to things that grow from the ground. I'll give you an example. What happens if it's raining and there's a clod of earth and you pick it up, okay, and you crumble it? That is grinding, because it grows from the ground, it is the ground, and therefore when you're taking it and you're I'll tell you another example for this. I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but what happens if somebody walks in the mud, okay, and the bottom of their shoe is mud, blotte, and now it dries. So now it's dried dirt at the bottom of your shoe. Now you want to get it off. So you go to a sharp metal step or something sharp, and you start grinding putting your shoes, and then what happens? The mud falls off. It's not wet. When it's wet, it's still like together. But if it's dry, and then you rub your foot on something sharp, so what's going to happen? You're grinding that earth. So that would also be forbidden on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But but again, when it doesn't come to things on the ground, like cheese, you want to make an egg salad or tuna salad, right? So you can chop an egg, mash up an egg. There's no problem. You can't use an egg masher. You can't use a grater to do it, but you can use a fork. Other things, what happens? I said, so that's why you're allowed to. But you can't use a keli. Even if it's not, we said before, you can't use a vessel whose designated use is to grind.
Is that because of the Kali's books or because...
No, because of Gufa, you would be allowed to. Just like birded, you can do selection of good from bad right before eating, but not with a vessel that's designated. You can't use a strainer or a sieve or something like that. So if you have to use, in fact, a lot of times, the Paska, if you want to mash a potato, like say, the Chachamim said if you use the handle, or there's big shinui. In other words, instead of mashing it with the teeth of the fork, you mash it with the handle of the fork. So then, right before eating, you would be allowed to mash a potato, because it's not real grinding; it's rabbinic grinding, and therefore the Chachamim said for food right before eating, you would be allowed to do it. What?
If you have a sourdough, and some people don't like the big crust on top, and they just want to scrape it off.
Okay, we're jumping the gun. We're jumping the guns too fast. But now that you ask, there's another din. There's no grinding after grinding. Which means, if I have a cracker, which was already ground into flour and baked, I can take the cracker and grind it up. You can't use a grind, but my fingers, I can grind it up. Why? Because halachically, there's no grinding after grinding. Grinding is only the first time. Once you already grind something once, halachically, there's no concept of grinding.
So dirt isn't solid.
Dirt is...
Even when it gets wet and dries out, it sticks together, but it's still individual pieces of dirt.
No, it's not. It was never ground to begin with. Ground as not in ground the Adama. Ground as in Tochen.
So, instead of saying dirt, it's sand.
Mud.
It's sand. Wet sand, you step in wet sand.
Yeah,
okay?
that would be the same thing.
It then dries on your shoe.
Right.
Sand,
It was never ground.
Sand is ground. Sand is...
It was... You didn't grind it. When we say there's no grinding after grinding means if it was already ground by humans, or maybe today by robots, or whatever. Yeah, one second, what?
So back to the
Sourdough.
the sourdough. That's not borer that you're scraping off the bad from the good?
No, because it's one thing.
So
It's one food, it's one entity. And there's no burden in one thing itself.
And the egg cutter, you put it in and there are...
The egg cutter, some people say you could use it. The question is, some people want to say you shouldn't use it in contemporary halacha because it slices it thin. So again, this is a vessel whose usage is to grind the egg. Now there's also machlekes in halacha. The Tzemach Tzedek holds that what happens, when you grind it, it could be length and width. Okay, let's say you take the cucumber, right? So you cut it in the width and then you chop it up. So it's cut length and width. But what happens if I take an onion, let's say, and we said you can't cut very thin. What's the din if I just slice an onion very thin, but I don't chop it up afterwards? Is that called grinding or not? Because it's only in the length. It's not length and width what normal grinding is. So the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe is machmir, and they bring him, like say, Shulchan brings him down. Other bring him down. Other people are more makel that it's not called grinding, because grinding is when you grind up an egg, means you chop it up thin in the length and in the width. But we hold that you're not allowed to, like the Tzemach Tzedek. So even if it's in the length itself, that you cannot do it. Okay, but I'll tell you, there's a whole interesting thing. We'll get not to today, but what?
How about garlic?
Garlic grows from the ground.
You can smash the garlic?
Now, you can't cut it very thin.
You can cut it very thin, or you cannot smash it.
You can't mash it either.
So my question is about garlic also. Does it matter if something is traditionally more thin? Like people mince garlic so it's like a paste, and then people chop it fine, and then people slice it.
But people cut up garlic also thin.
Right, what I'm saying is that if it has a form where people traditionally make like minced garlic,
You still can't cut it very thin without mincing it also, because people do. Again, like the question would be an Israeli salad if you want to make. So making an egg salad is again not a problem of grinding. There might be other problems, because there's another malacha that's called losh, which is kneading, K-N-E-A-D, kneading, dough. That's the bread process. It's called Sedura de Pasnoka, the Medumar says. The Mishnah mentions the way of bread. Okay? So first you plant it, and then you plow it, and then, you plow, and then you plant, and then those are all the malachas that lead up. So one of the malachas is what they did in the Mishkan when they made the bread, the showbread, the lechem aponim. They ground it up into flour, and then you mix the flour with water. How do you make bread? Or challah, right? You have flour, and you have to mix it with water. So that's also a concept called kneading. Now, kneading is the opposite of tochen. Grinding, you're taking something big, and you're making it into little things. And kneading is you're taking a bunch of loose particles, and you make it into one dough, or one thing like that. So we'll learn, it's not so terrible, but sometimes you can have an issue of kneading, even if you make a tuna salad or an egg salad, that now you grind up to chop up the egg, and now, I'm not saying it's forbidden, I'm just saying the concept. And then you mix margarine in it, or oil in it, and now the pieces are going to be sticking together. So now the question is that called kneading or not? So there's a lot of leniency you could do right before eating. I'm just saying, but conceptually, Matthew, sit down. There's a lot of issues with that type of thing that might be not necessarily grinding, it might come to kneading and things like that. What?
On mud, let's say a person has mud on his shoes. Does it make a difference if it's hard or if it's like water?
So I said, if it's wet mud, you're not grinding. If it's dry mud, you're grinding.
And can you use the sidewalk if it's dry? The sidewalk, the side of the sidewalk.
To rub it into... Yeah. No, you're still grinding it.
If it's dry.
Huh?
If it's dry.
If it's dry.
It's wet to put it.
Yeah. One second. Yeah.
So the guacamole is just like the thing of the potato, that you can do it as long as you eat it that for that moment.
Okay, we're not done yet. We jumped into 40 aspects of Tochen when we're not going into a proper order to get it straight. But what?
Salt and pepper, sometimes you grind it.
The grinding of salt and pepper, not the finished ground pepper. There's a big issue. If you have pepper corns, and then you put them into that machine and you go like this because it's fresh pepper, that is what's called biblical grinding on Shabbos. I mean, it grows from the ground, and you have a machine that's designated to grind, and you're grinding it. So that wouldn't be allowed.
Not salt.
Salt, again, if you're grinding, if it's thick salt, and you want to grind it,
Salt doesn't grow from the ground.
oh, right, salt doesn't grow from the ground. No, you're right, that aspect. But peppers, other spices would be an issue. Salt doesn't come from the ground.
It doesn't grow from the ground.
One second. Okay, I have to double check with salt as far as grinding goes. I don't mean, I have to look it up, I don't remember. I mean, because nowadays, today we don't grind salt. I mean, it's already... So then... Huh? Grind it, 1 second. All right. Oh, thank you. I am late.